Level 1. The Candidate. You are 26 and you have already served in the British Army. You know how to live in a barracks and carry equipment and follow orders when the weather is bad and sleep is short. You know how to keep moving when your boots have turned your feet into two separate injuries. What you do not know is whether those experiences have prepared you for this. You arrive before sunrise at a wet military camp in Wales. An olive army bus cools beside a row of stone buildings and rain runs down the windows like the place is already trying to wash you away. The candidates climb down without ceremony. Some come from infantry and some from engineers and signals and other parts of the army. Some have served overseas and some look too young to have seen anything serious. One man keeps checking his laces. Another has not spoken since the bus arrived. You are given a number, a route, a time, and a weight. Nobody gives you a speech about courage. Nobody tells you that you are special. The first march begins, and the group spreads out almost immediately. The strong go too fast, and the nervous stop too often. You learn the first rule by watching both groups make the same mistake. You are not trying to win the morning. You are trying to avoid losing the next minute, one foot, then the other. Check the map before the fog becomes a problem. Drink before thirst becomes a distraction. Do not waste energy trying to look comfortable. The instructors move around the group without raising their voices. That is worse than shouting. Shouting gives you something to resist. Silence gives you only your own thoughts. At the first checkpoint, a staff member checks your time without smiling. You want approval. You receive one short nod, and somehow that feels more demanding than no response at all. That night, one rucksack is gone. Nobody asks why. The course does not care about your reasons. It cares whether you continue after your reason stops feeling convincing. The next morning, the route is longer. Your shoulders hurt when you lift your arms, and your feet feel swollen inside your boots. The man who checked his laces is no longer beside you. You do not know when he left. You only know that the space where he stood is now empty. You cross wet grass, dark streams, and black peat. You pass a candidate sitting beside the route with his head lowered. You slow for half a step, and then keep moving. At the end of the day, you remove your boots on the barracks floor. There is blood on one sock. You fold it and place it beside the other one. In the morning, you will wear them again. You are not SAS yet. You are only a candidate who has not quit. Level 2, the selected man. Passing selection does not make you SAS. It only proves that you have earned the right to be tested in a more expensive way. The next phase is quieter than the march and more difficult to explain to anyone at home. The selection course gave you a route and a visible finish. Continuation training gives you incomplete information and expects you to make useful decisions inside it. You learned communications, medical response, survival movement, and navigation. You learn that equipment is only simple when your hands are warm, and the person beside you is not depending on the result. An instructor explains a procedure once. You think you understand it until you try to repeat it in rain and darkness. A small mistake becomes extra work for the team. A hidden injury becomes a problem for everyone. A person who refuses to speak because he wants to look strong can place more pressure on his friends than a person who admits he is struggling. In the heat of jungle training, the world becomes green and close around you. The air sits on your skin, and every piece of equipment feels heavier than it did in Wales. You cross rivers at night and keep your kit above the water. You move through vegetation, where every route looks like the last one, and the track disappears behind you almost as quickly as you create it. One man begins to limp and says he is fine. You watch his stride and see that his answer does not match his body. You take him aside and ask again. This time, the truth appears slowly. The injury is not dramatic. That is why it is dangerous. You report it and accept that he may leave the course. The team continues and you carry more than your own equipment for a while. At night, you sit beneath a wet shelter and argue about a route. One person sees a technical problem, another sees a timing problem. You notice the human problem that both of them missed. Everyone is tired enough to defend an opinion instead of serving the task. Your job is not to win the argument. Your job is to leave the shelter with the best answer. At home, Your family asks when you will return. You give them a date that may be correct. They ask whether the training is dangerous. You say it is demanding. Demanding is a useful word. It can mean anything and reveal almost nothing. A few days later, an instructor reads a list. Several men leave with their bags. Nobody makes a speech. The empty places explain enough. You remain standing. You are not yet a trooper. You are a selected man, standing outside a system that has not decided whether it wants to keep you. Level 3, the trooper. You are now a trooper. The title sounds like a promotion, but the first thing it gives you is responsibility for your own standard. There is no magic equipment that turns you into an expert. There is only repetition correction and the slow embarrassment of discovering how much you still do not know. Your days include preparation that would look boring to anyone outside the regiment. You check kit and review information and rehearse movement and update plans. You wait for a decision and then wait again. When the decision arrives, you move quickly because the waiting was part of the work. You become part of a small team. The best person in the room is not always the fastest or the loudest or the most decorated. Sometimes it is the person who notices that a plan has quietly stopped matching reality. You are given a specialist area and expected to become useful without becoming narrow. The person who understands communications must still understand the team. The person who knows medical response must still navigate. The person who can solve a technical problem must still notice when the real problem is fear or fatigue or disagreement nobody wants to name. You learn to explain complicated information in a way that tired people can use. You learn to ask for help before a small problem becomes a large one. Your first overseas tasking is less cinematic than you imagined. You sit in the back of a vehicle and watch an unfamiliar landscape pass behind dusty glass. You know where you are and why you are there. You also know that you are not allowed to tell anyone at home. Your mother sends a message asking if you are safe. You type that everything is fine. You delete it and write that the weather is warm. It is the first lie you tell for the job. You tell yourself it will be temporary. That is the second lie. The regiment does not make you fearless. It teaches you how to work while fear is present. You eat with the team in a plane room, and for a few minutes everyone looks ordinary. Then a radio speaks, and the room changes. Your own performance is no longer enough. Your mistake travels through other people, and your reliability becomes part of their confidence. Level 4. The corporal promotion changes the way people look at you before it changes the way you look at yourself. You are a corporal, and a small team now depends on your judgment. You do not need to be the best soldier in every category. You need to know what the team needs from you today. One man is rushing because he wants to impress the people above him. Another is too quiet because he is hiding a problem. A third has the experience to help but is waiting for permission. You learn to see these things before they become incidents. Leadership is mostly prevention. You ask questions before the briefing. You check whether everyone understands the plan, and not whether everyone has nodded. You correct people privately when you can. Public humiliation produces obedience for a day and resentment for years. The team trains until the sequence becomes boring. That is the point. When pressure arrives, you do not want anyone searching for a clever idea. You want the right habits available before thought catches up. A young soldier moves too quickly during a rehearsal. Stop him with one raised hand. Nobody shouts. The team returns to the beginning and starts again. A different soldier asks a question after the briefing. You listen instead of treating the question as weakness. You learn that a good leader creates space for other people to think. A bad leader fills every silence with his own voice. After a difficult exercise, one of the younger men sits alone with his head lowered. You sit beside him without speaking. Sometimes people need space before they can tell the truth. Your first formal assessment says that you show potential and need greater confidence under pressure. You dislike the phrase until you understand what it means. Confidence is not speaking louder. It is making a decision and accepting that someone else must live with it. You begin to sleep differently. Before you worried about what would happen to you. Now you wake thinking about what you failed to notice in someone else. Your promotion is not a reward for becoming important. It is permission to be blamed when the team fails. Level 5. The sergeant. As a sergeant, you are no longer learning only how to perform. You are learning how to prepare other people to perform when you are not beside them. You plan more than you move. You read more than you speak. You sit in rooms with maps, photographs, reports, and coffee that goes cold before anyone touches it. The objective may be clear, but the conditions are not. You ask what changes if the weather closes, or the information is wrong, or the timing moves. You ask what happens if the team reaches the point where the original plan no longer makes sense. Some people hear caution and think fear. You learn that caution is respect for consequences. The younger soldiers want certainty. You give them what you have, which is a clear task and an honest description of what remains unknown. False certainty feels good until the first decision built on it fails. Honest uncertainty is uncomfortable, but it leaves room for people to think. You see men leave the path. Some do not pass further training, some choose family. Some discover that secrecy has taken more from them than expected. There is rarely a dramatic farewell. A locker is empty. A name disappears from the schedule. Someone says he has moved on. You nod and do not ask for details. The regiment teaches you to protect information. Eventually, you start protecting silence too. You become responsible for standards that cannot be measured by one test. Are people rested enough to think? Are they confident enough to speak? Are they so confident that they have stopped listening? Your team begins to understand that your calm does not mean the situation is safe. It means panic is not useful yet. The higher you rise, the less the work looks like action, and the more it looks like judgment. You begin translating between soldiers and command. The job is no longer to be the strongest person in the room. The job is to make the room honest enough for a good decision. Level 6. The Troop Sergeant. You now help lead a troop, a small operational group whose people have different skills, fears, and private reasons for staying. Your job is to make them function as one body without turning them into machines. You know who needs pressure and who needs a quiet conversation beside a vehicle after training. You know who is ready for more responsibility and who is brave enough to say they are not. That last person may be the one you trust most. Planning meetings use words like access, attribution, contingencies, and political sensitivity. You return to your people and explain what matters without hiding behind the language of the briefing. They do not need a lecture about policy. They need to know what is expected, what is unknown, and what cannot be compromised. You become a translator between people who approve tasks and people who must live inside them. Higher command wants confidence. Your team needs honesty. You learn to say this is possible, but it is not simple. You learn to say, we can do it, but the cost is higher than the briefing suggests. You learn to say no. The word feels heavier than any piece of equipment. One night you watch rain move across the lights, while younger soldiers argue inside about music. You remember your first selection march and the message you never sent home? You thought the regiment would make you tougher. It has made you more aware of how easily people break. That knowledge changes the way you give orders. You do not waste words. You do not promise safety. You promise preparation. The troop learns that you will tell them the truth, even when the truth is unpopular. That trust is not a feeling. It is a record of repeated decisions. At home, a bright family date sits beside gray work papers. You know which one matters more, but the phone keeps changing the order of your life. Your wife sees that you are present in the room and absent from the moment she does not ask what happened. She has learned the shape of the boundary around your life. Level 7. The Squadron. Second in command. At this level, the scale changes. You help coordinate several troops with different tasks, timelines, and levels of readiness. Your work becomes less visible and more consequential. A poor decision in a training schedule can leave a team unprepared months later. A careless assumption in a briefing can travel through command and return as a problem when there is no time left to correct it. You learn to read documents for what they do not say. The missing name, the unexplained delay, the sentence that sounds certain because nobody wants to admit the evidence is thin. You brief people who outrank you. Rank guarantees authority. It does not guarantee wisdom. Your job is to make the truth difficult to ignore. You give the inconvenient answer in a room full of people who want a clean one. You ask whether the team is rested enough to think. You ask whether the information is reliable enough to act on. You ask whether the plan still matches the reason it was approved. You discover that elite units are not protected from ordinary human problems. Ego fatigue, miscommunication, ambition, grief. The difference is that consequences arrive faster. Your calendar fills with meetings, your head fills with names, your family sees you at home but not entirely present. Your daughter asks whether you will be at her school performance. You say yes, then you check the date. You do not know whether you are promising her or negotiating with the future. You write the date on a bright card and place it beside your work papers. The card is small, but it becomes the most important object in the room. You arrive late at the school hall and see her on the stage. She finds you at the back and relaxes for 1 second. For her, it is a simple moment. For you, it is a reminder that responsibility is not always measured in national decisions. Sometimes it is measured by whether you sat in the right chair when someone you love was looking for you. Level 8. The Squadron Commander. You are now a major commanding a squadron. The title gives you authority. It does not give you certainty. You are responsible for readiness, standards, discipline, and decisions made under the squadron name. The work is a rhythm of preparation. Waiting, sudden movement, and more waiting. You are judged on outcomes, but outcomes are shaped by decisions made long before anyone sees the result. Did you ask the second question? Did you challenge the assumption? Did you give the team enough time? Did you understand the political risk as well as the practical risk? You learn that the most dangerous word in a briefing is obvious. Nothing is obvious when information is incomplete and the consequences belong to someone else. Your phone rings at an hour when the house is dark. You leave the bedroom before answering. The voice on the line is calm. That is how you know the situation is serious. You listen. You ask for clarification. You give an answer that will affect people who are not in the room. When the call ends, your wife is awake. She does not ask what happened. You do not tell her. She has learned the shape of the boundary around your life. The next morning, you sit in a room with people who expect confidence. You give them a decision instead. The difference matters. Confidence can be performed. A decision must be owned. You review the plan again, not because you are uncertain about everything, but because certainty is not evidence. At this level, your people watch what you do with doubt. If you hide it, they may hide their own. If you display too much, they may lose trust. Leadership becomes the art of carrying uncertainty without giving it to everyone else. That is the promotion nobody celebrates. You become easier for the state to trust and harder for your family to reach. Level 9. The Regimental Commander. At the highest command level, you are not simply leading operators. You are managing a national instrument. You answer to people who think in years, budgets, alliances, and headlines. Your soldiers think in hours, equipment plans, and trust. You must understand both languages. You represent an organization that officially says very little and is publicly blamed for everything people imagine it does. You know the difference between secrecy and myth. Secrecy protects operations. Myth protects reputations until it becomes too large to control. Your responsibility is to keep the regiment professional when the legend becomes louder than the work. You review standards, you approve priorities, you speak to senior officers, ministers, and investigators. You read reports filled with words like accountability, necessity, and proportionality. The words matter, so do the people behind them. You know an elite unit can fail in ways that do not look like failure at first. A culture can become too closed. A successful method can become habit. A trusted person can become careless. Your job is to ask questions before someone else asks them publicly. The hardest decision is not ordering a plan to begin. It is ordering a plan to stop. Someone has spent weeks preparing. Someone else has already imagined the result. You say the decision is final. Nobody argues that. Does not mean everyone agrees. It means they understand the weight carried by the person who made it. Later, alone in your office, you look at a photograph of younger soldiers. Some have left. Some are dead. Some refuse to discuss the past. You remember their faces and the parts of their lives that never entered a report. You spent your career learning how to protect the team. Now you must protect the institution from itself. You read every complaint twice. You do not dismiss a concern because it comes from someone outside the system. You do not accept an accusation because it is dramatic. You ask what can be proved, what must be investigated, and what must change, regardless of who is embarrassed. Command at this level is not about looking powerful. It is about preventing power from becoming careless. Level 10. The veteran. You leave quietly. There is a ceremony, a handshake, a photograph, and words about service. They are sincere. They are also incomplete. No ceremony can contain the years. You return home with papers, medals, and a phone that no longer rings at night. At first, the silence feels like freedom. Then it begins to feel like absence. You wake before dawn because your body remembers a schedule your life no longer needs. You choose a table in a restaurant where you can see the entrance. You keep your back away from the open room. You notice exits without intending to. Friends ask what you did. You give them the official version. They ask for stories. You tell them the safe ones. The truth is not that you cannot remember. The truth is that you remember too clearly which parts do not belong to you anymore. You visit the old unit once. The buildings look smaller. The corridor is brighter. A young soldier walks past carrying equipment and looking exactly as certain as you once did. He does not recognize you. That is the right outcome. You are not supposed to become a monument inside the place that replaced you. At home, your daughter finds an old photograph and asks which one is you. You point to a younger man near the edge of the group. She says you look happy. You tell her that you were. You do not explain that happiness and danger can exist in the same life. You do not explain that every promotion brought more authority and less permission to speak. You do not explain that the regiment gave you purpose and took pieces of ordinary life in exchange. You do not explain the years when your family learned not to ask questions because questions made the house feel smaller. You only tell her that the people beside you mattered. That is the part you are allowed to keep. Final truth. The candidate thinks the SAS is about becoming fearless. The selected man learns that the test continues after selection. The trooper learns to work while afraid. The corporal learns that a team watches everything. The sergeant learns that habits matter more than speeches. The troop sergeant learns that honesty can be a form of protection. The second in command learns that small errors travel. The squadron commander learns that certainty is not evidence. The regimental commander learns that power requires accountability. The veteran learns the final truth. The regiment does not make you someone else. It reveals what remains when comfort, privacy, and certainty have been removed. And if you are lucky when the last door closes and the phone finally stops ringing, you still recognize the person who walked through the first one. That person may be older and quieter and less certain than before, but he is still there, still carrying the weight, still remembering the people who carried it with him. End which closed hierarchy should we follow next?